Good evening, everybody. This meeting is being held by Westmass, but the Select Board is in attendance, and we're going to open our meeting. Can I have a motion to open, please? I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
I thought you wanted to answer questions. Jen, do you want to wait a couple minutes, or do you want to get started?
I think we can start.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, is everybody ready? Yeah. All right. Good evening, everybody. Many of you I saw, I think it was in last July that I was here speaking in front of the group in the town with the Select Board, right after we acquired the property from the state of Massachusetts, and we're here to discuss tonight, obviously, the future of Monson development. We're not going to be able to provide answers to everything you have questions for, but we will have questions and answers after. We're still in the very preliminary stage of doing our due diligence for this project to go ahead and move the project forward. There's still a lot of, quite a few of steep hurdles we have to get through first. Some of tonight's meeting, we're going to talk about who we are and what we do. What the background is, most of you know, most of you have been residents here, and if you haven't, we'll give you a quick brief history. Proposed zoning, which is our next big step that we're going to ask the community to support. Then potential community impacts, what we know, what we don't know, and then Q&A. We'll open it up for open discussions. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Jen for hosting us and the Select Board for being here as well. We're excited to be here and share with you what we've learned so far and where our next steps are. Also, I'd like to introduce Dan Knappich. He's our Vice President of Operations at Westmass. His email is d. And Sean, his cell phone is, now Sean O'Donnell's our Community Planning Director, and both have been instrumental in hours and hours of meetings going into this, this development and this redevelopment of a site. So without further ado, Westmass, for those of you who don't know, we've been around since 1960. Created by the Commonwealth basically to do real estate and economic development in Western Mass. They didn't forget about us back then, but they certainly tend to forget about us now. We are a not-for-profit economic development firm, meaning we can make profit, but we roll it back into projects that we undertake. So we're not a private developer in here just trying to make money and up and leaving. We are community participants, we're community sensitive, and we try to work with the communities that we work in as close as we can. The mission is to develop and manage exceptional properties, enhance and strengthen communities through investments that create jobs, housing, and economic stability. To date, Westmass has developed over 2,500 acres in 13 industrial parks, enabled build-outs of over 12 million square feet. I think it's probably a little bit more than that now, as well as some residential space, and we've leveraged over $400 million invested into the projects that we've been involved with the creation of 10,000 jobs here in Western Massachusetts. And we only are here in Western Mass. One of our marquee projects that we've done for the last 10 or 12 years, many of you are familiar with, and we're really proud of the way this looks. This is Ludlow Mills. This is what's known as the Mill 8 with the clock tower. That just finished this year. It went online in December of last year. And there's 95 new apartments in there. The clock tower works, for anybody who's familiar with Ludlow, for the first time in probably 2 generations. So we're real proud of that work and that accomplishment and providing housing in one of the oldest and most dilapidated buildings on the property, and there's a couple others that have gone through the same renovation, and we'll take a look at those in a second. Yep. Historic mill complex located along the Chicopee River, 130 acres of more than 50 brick buildings with a total floor space of approximately 1.1 million square feet. So you can imagine the enormity of this project. We have taken down quite a bit of buildings that were no longer usable. and some that were actually in the way of new investments we made, new roadways and infrastructure. So the majority of the buildings have been saved because they were operational up until we took over the property, unlike some other properties that we deal with today, including Monson. Go back. I'll tell you when. 5 large story structures in the 300. Those are the biggest buildings on our property currently, and they're massive. They're 450,000 square feet each. The windows you see when you drive by the Ludlow Mills, there's, I think, 600 window panes or 6,000 window panes in one building. The remaining buildings are mostly single-story stockhouse buildings located along Chicopee River, and we have a mixed use of commercial tenants in there, some retail tenants in there, as well as some state agencies. The sheriff has some space in there. Yep. So this is what it looked like when Westmass purchased the property back in 2012-13. As you can see, it's boarded up windows, broken glass everywhere, windows if there was, dirt parking lots, and we've made significant investments into the property since. In 2014, we introduced a healthcare facility, Health South. It wasn't Compass or isn't Compass. Civic Anchor, which is the Ludlow Senior Center. The 95 senior apartments you'll see here with the beautiful picture on the bottom. We're real proud of that. And then also 76 apartments in 2017 in the upper. And those are just some of our retail tenants and commercial tenants. And we also invested in the River Walk, which goes along the Chicopee River. And it's got to see 100,000 people a year. It's just always busy, people walking, riding their bikes, walking the dogs. It's just a really beautiful setting. Yep. Moving on to Monson Development. We'll look at the video as we talk, but as many people have seen and probably have been up there over the years, this is a real challenging site, to say the least. Number one, it's a shame that the state walked away from this and kind of left everything and shut everything off and cut services, because with some love and care in the 2012 era when they shut some of these buildings down, it certainly, some of these buildings could have been preserved. I know there's not a whole lot. I was speaking with a woman who's lived there 65 years, right on Hospital Road. There's not always the best memories from places like this. So we're looking at basically all these buildings are contaminated and or unsafe. If you've been up there, most of the buildings, if not all, have the big red X on it, which means if it burns, the fire department lets it burn and kind of contains it to the building. So there's not a lot of safety. Additionally, we'll get into it a little bit, but as we're looking at it, everybody sees the beautiful brick, the beautiful slate. All of those are attached with asbestos glue. So it's unfortunate that, the woman from Hospital Road asked if we could sell bricks. There's going to be some that we can, but most of them are with the asbestos glue on it, so it's a hot material. Same with the slate roofs. Beautiful slate roofs still to this day, but they're held together with the asbestos. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of salvage we can do out of this. We'll talk about in a minute our goals for 2 of the buildings. But Sean, if you want to, brief history of the campus. It began in 1854 as a state original almshouse and later evolved to state school, and by the 1890s was the hospital for epileptics. Between 1900 and 1940, the facility expanded to an institutional campus of 70 buildings across more than 600 acres. Our portion is only 108 acres, and it's kind of in the valley. It's where all the major brick buildings are, right? It's in the valley of the 2 mountains. Across the street from Upper Palmer Road, people drive by, they see the equipment up there. That's not us, that's the state. They're taking down the children's campus. And basically all that land on that side of Upper Palmer is going to be turned over to Fish and Game for passive recreation and basically preservation of the mountainsides. The other acreage in the middle is what we're going to be working on. It's 108 acres. The population of this area peaked in 1968 with 1,700 residents, along with hundreds of full-time staff, as the neighbors who've been there for a while know. Following decades of decline, they closed the facility in 2012. But one of the things that we did notice in some of these photographs, and I'm sure it brings back memories from some people, there were some beautiful buildings. And like I said at the beginning, if the state invested just a small amount of money to keep these, heated in water and things turned on, the mechanicals, it'd be a different story than we're sitting here talking about today. Not all are conducive to adaptive reuse, but certainly some could have been. So that was then. And the current breakdown ownership, I don't have a pointer, so I'm going to try to do this the best I can without getting too much in the way. The blue outline is the 450-acre of Department and Fish and Game that we talked about on the other side of Upper Palmer Road. The red outline you see here is what Westmass is be taking, and that's about 108 acres or 106 acres. 40 acres is agricultural fields, which are in the middle of the campus. So as we go through the progress of getting this zoning and permitting everything going, you're going to see that right in the middle of the campus, there's two big fields that are going to be maintained and retained. And then to the upper part that is yellow, that is basically going to stay the state's property. That's where the old powerhouse is, and the landfill and the cemetery and those types of things. So it really breaks apart, but the most important one that we're going to talk about obviously is going to be the 106-acre redevelopment area, which is the project that we're looking to undertake. What's happening now? I already mentioned it. DCAM is demolishing the other side of Upper Palmer on the mountains where the children's used to be. Pre-demolition and environmental assessments are happening across the main campus to support demolition plan for 2026. I think many of you recall that when we spoke this past summer, our goal is to start demolition probably in summer of 26, finishing in summer of 27. So it's a pretty aggressive schedule, but thankfully when we get in there, there's not a lot of obstacles. We can start really just dismantling, cleaning the buildings and dismantling them. The town recently received a $5 million MaxWorks grant, yay for the town, to replace the State Hospital Road Bridge that we spoke about earlier and upgrade roadway, water, and sewer infrastructure. Jen and her team worked with us on that, and we're real proud that we got the $5 million. I think it's probably the biggest grant that the town has ever received, and it's probably one of the most important. That bridge, as we all know, it's not a conducive bridge for heavy traffic every day, and that's what it gets, as well as redoing some of the roadway and infrastructure underneath that roadway so that we can start redeveloping it. What's planned for the site? Westmass will present a zoning bylaw for the planning board, and I can't see that far, so I'm gonna have to go to this. And this is really important to the town because we're gonna present it to the planning board, but with hopes that we can come to an agreement on how the zoning should be. The planning board will then hopefully approve to pass it to town meeting in May. And we're hoping we get the support, hopefully the overwhelming support of the town to do a zone change there. Right now it is currently, what's it? Reserve land, which basically is nothing. It's all for hospital use. So we'll talk about what happens if it doesn't go a little later in the presentation, but this is why we're here talking about it tonight, because we will have to go in front of the planning board, and we want to make sure the residents of Monson are prepared and understand what we're looking at. The proposed zoning would create a mixed-use district, and it would support long-term redevelopment of the property. Proposed housing types, as you can see, I'm going to go up in front of here. Probably going to just yell. On the left, you can see the 3 and 4 apartment mixed use. Those aren't going to be just massive apartment buildings. Number one, they're restricted, the height and everything. But what those we intend to be is veterans housing, maybe some assisted living, those types of facilities where it won't impede on the fabric of Monson. Multifamily townhomes, those are what they say they are. Duplexes, whatever they're going to be, fourplexes with townhomes. cottages, which are smaller single-family homes, which are anywhere from 900 to 1,200 square feet, affordable, not the affordable, but affordable for people to buy. Because one of the things that we recognize when we've been meeting with Jen and her team and certainly the research and the data collecting is the affordability for new homes in Monson and to have the access to smaller homes. A lot of people still have big farmhouses they may not want to take care of because their kids left, their families left, and they want to stay in Monson because it's such a great community. There aren't that many of these style homes right now, and that's our goal, is to make sure the residents of Monson stay in Monson. And this is a really nice concept. It's not invasive, it's not really in your face, it's really nice cul-de-sacs. Again, these are not drawn out. This is just what we've put on here to show you what we're thinking about. These aren't designed yet. And then up on the top, as you can imagine, the further up on the mountain you get, the more expensive utilities get. So we would do estate lots up top, projected, which means basically 3, 4, 5 acres with a home on it. Families and single folks that come into the community, they want to build a new home, they want to settle the roots here, that could give them the opportunity to do that. And then what we're asking when we go through the planning and zoning board is for small scale commercial and office use, which we think there is a need. It's going to be on a smaller portion of the overall site. Light industrial, I always use the statement of, if there's another commercial building that a machine shop's in and they have a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot machine shop, light use, light commercial, and they want to expand and grow and they have nowhere to go, thank you. This could present an opportunity for small commercial growth there. And then civic and institutional. When I say civic and institutional, we mean community. We've already talked with Jen about potentially doing some things for the town of Monson. Palmer actually has shown interest of seeing if there's something here for them. We may keep the Daily facility. Of course, we got to keep the Daily name, right? We'll just add an E in it. But it's an important building, and it's one of the most modern buildings built. I think it was in the 60s. And we think we can get the asbestos out and clean it up. And it's got a beautiful auditorium like this. It's got a gymnasium, a basketball court. So we really want to try to make a civic building, civic use building out of that. What is not being proposed? Large institutional or state-led residential programs. We talked about this last time. This is a private development. This is not the state coming in and saying, you're going to build X, you're going to house X. This is a private development. So this is not a large institutional or state-led development. High-intensity industrial uses, this isn't the spot for it. It's quite simply, it's not the right area for it. We want to keep it more of a village concept where the people that live there and potentially could work there, or some small retail. Uses and resembling former large institutional campus. There won't be anything that looks like it is today there. Ultimately, housing, how many units, you're all going to ask. We don't know yet. Honestly, we don't know, but it's going to be determined by market conditions. People aren't just going to come in and build 10 units and hope they sell. It's going to be driven by market conditions. And private development interest, infrastructure. As you can imagine, when the state came in, they closed the facility in 2012. All the infrastructure except for some streetlight power and some fire hydrant power, everything else was completely capped at Upper Palmer and Hospital Road. So there's no infrastructure that's usable right now in the entire facility. So the investments that we're going to have to make as the private developer to support the housing uses, the small commercial or retail uses, is a significant investment, and it's not going to happen overnight. And site constraints. How many people have actually been on the site other than just driving through? What do you feel like a billy goat when you leave there, right? You're huffing and puffing because everything is uphill and downhill and moving around. It's a pretty challenging site. So we're using that very diligently to figure out how best to use the entire site so it doesn't overburden infrastructure or the visual aspect of the entire site. The planning board will review, including site plan approvals and potentially special permits. And the zoning bylaw will be intended to prevent incompatible or unwanted uses while allowing appropriate neighborhood scale develop to occur over time. Potential impacts to the town, tax base, right, currently it's tax exempt. And while that's there, number 10 in the, number 10 in the question and answer was pointed out to me earlier. It says because the property is currently state-owned. That's incorrect. We own the property. It was just misstated. We own the property of what we pointed out. We don't own the landfill. We don't own the powerhouse or any of the hay fields or anything like that. It's what we pointed out earlier. Redevelopment will generate a taxable value for Monson because currently the state, I think it may pay a pilot tax, but it's next to nothing. A comprehensive plan, as we go through this, we're going to do studies for traffic, public safety, infrastructure, school impacts. The evaluations will occur before any new construction, including a MIPA review, which is the Massachusetts Environmental Policy review. So they're going to look at to make sure we're environmentally protecting everything on the site that needs to be protected, including off-site traffic studies and things like that. Mitigation strategies developed in coordination with the town boards. Infrastructure and phasing, as I mentioned, major infrastructure improvements are going to be required. And quite honestly, anybody who's watching the news today, the power is going to be our biggest challenge. National Grid won't even talk to us until we have a project planned. So, you know, we're constantly monitoring that and figuring out ways if we can do clean energy on the site. Through solar panels, however, we're trying to just look at everything. We're not saying we're doing it. And we think National Grid will come in at the end to support us, but it's major, major dollars. Costs, and this is why it's never gone privately developed before. As many of you know and recall, the state has put this project out 3 or 4 times in probably the last 10 years or 12 years. And people have looked at it, but the major investment that it takes in the long game return, the private developers don't want it. They need the immediate return to make their money and move on. We are designed to take on projects like this, like we did in Ludlow for the mills. Cost and sequencing will shape and pace the scale of development. Like we said, it's going to be market driven, it's going to be zoning driven, it's going to be finance driven. And the long-term development is going to be likely over a 20-year period, similar to what we're doing at Ludlow Mills. And it's driven by the infrastructure readiness, market demand, and certainly the permitting from the town. What we know and what we don't know. We know zoning is needed for meaningful planning. We know that major demolition and infrastructure work is ahead and coming. We know redevelopment will take many years, and we know many future decisions will involve the town boards and community input. This isn't a one-way street. We're not going to come in and do what we want to do or do what we think we can do. We're going to be involving the community. I've said it from day one. I stood up on this stage, and whoever was here in June, this is intended to help Monson, not disrupt the fabric of Monson. This is intended to be a village concept where it's as least impactful on the life of the people that live in Monson as we can. And it means something to us to do it that way, not just to come in, blow the buildings down and throw up a bunch of buildings and leave. We're here, if we do this project, we're here for the next 20 years as your neighbors, and we're excited about that. What we don't know yet, exact housing mix or unit counts, those will come out over the next 4 or 5 months as we go through the process leading up to the planning board and the zone and the zone change at town meeting. Timing of specific private development proposals. We could get all the buildings down, we could get the zone change, and then we wait. We've done this before. We are the right people to do this. We have already discussions. I think Dan has already spoken to a couple of the veterans groups to potentially do some veterans housing here down the road. We've talked to some people with maybe assisted living to come into town. But again, all these things are going to be vetted out through the town. This isn't we're not coming in as a bully to say we're doing all this stuff. It's going to be vetted in partnership and as a neighbor in the town of Monson. And we don't know the final layout or site plans. So if any of you ask that question, we'll just blanket it now and say we don't know what it's going to be yet. We're working real hard with our friends at VHB, and certainly Ty and Bond is leading the way, and I think Ty and Bond's somewhere in the room, but Ty and Bond is doing most of the engineering with us, so they're a local firm. They know it. VHB is doing some work with us as well. Another local firm, great firm, and they're both local. We're not getting people out of New York, Boston, whatever. We operate with local professionals to come in and support us. But we don't know what that final layout will be yet. And then on the other side, zoning is the foundational step that Westmass needs to begin the detailed engineering, environmental planning work necessary to those to answer these questions. What happens if the zoning doesn't pass? And this is a very real slide. It's not meant to scare people. It's not meant to impose a developer coming in and saying, listen to us, we have to do this. This is very real. And I'm going to tell you, Monson residents, as a neighbor and a friend, we're all Western Mass, this is a very real slide. If the zoning does not pass in May, what could happen? In our P&S that we have made in June, I was here in July, we have what's called a reversion clause in there. Meaning, if we can't get town approval to have the zone change, if the state doesn't support us with the funding we need to get the buildings demolished, if we can't get a site plan that works because of limitations on zoning and or limitations from the state, reversion clause means, here's the keys, state. We're not taking on this project with no outcome for the town. We absolutely don't want that. We wouldn't be standing up here, the three of us and our colleagues around Western Mass for Westmass, wouldn't be standing here tonight if this was a throwaway project. We're passionate. We've committed hundreds and thousands of hours to this project without even anything on the table yet. But that could happen. If we don't get the zone change that we're hoping will be vetted certainly through the planning board and then vetted through town meeting in May, that could happen. The reversion clause is there for a protection for Westmass because we can't take on a sinking ship without any support from the state or the town. If zoning is not approved, Westmass would likely exercise that right. Under Mass Affordable Homes Act, the state may redevelop surplus properties using state-led processes that can bypass local zoning for housing. What does that mean? That means if we walk away, we give them the keys back, the state can come in, get all the buildings on the ground, get some infrastructure started, they would bypass all local zoning. They could come in and put up whatever they want without local input. This is not a threat. This is not big bad Westmass development. This is true. This is what we want to prevent for the town of Monson. We want to prevent the state having to come back in and basically walk through the door of the community, demo the buildings and build whatever they want for housing. They still have to follow the environmental laws and all of that, but they can come in and build whatever they want for the Affordable Homes Act of 2024 that was passed. What happens if the zoning doesn't pass? Local control over use of scale compatibility would be less compared to locally crafted zoning district, which we're coming to you folks about, to craft a district that works for our development plans, but more importantly, works for the community. Zoning keeps Monson in the driver's seat. If zoning is not adopted locally, the future of the property moves out of the local planning process and into the state-driven process. Local zoning gives the town the strongest role in shaping what ultimately happens. And I'm not going to fluff it up and say that, we're in it to make money so we can keep reinvesting into the project. So I promise you it's not going to be 150 soccer fields. we have to do this development very intelligently, very diligently, and very cautiously because we need to keep making money off of what we develop in order to keep expanding the project and doing other projects in the local communities that we serve. So again, this isn't a flexing muscle type of message, but it's a very real message. And ask Dan and Sean, every day in the office, I say, if this stuff doesn't work, we're going to give the keys back because we can't be saddled with a 50 building property that is loaded with asbestos, loaded with all sorts of other stuff, and with no path forward and no zoning that will allow us to create that path forward. So that's probably the most important slide that we have. And of course, it goes right into questions. Thanks, Sean. I sat up here 4 or 5 months ago with the select board and Jen, and we talked about us taking the property, working with the state. Every day that we're putting these hours into this project, my team is wholly committed to making sure this is a community project, making sure, and you can ask them, do not upset the fabric of Monson or the surrounding towns that we have, because it's that important to us. We want to do a great project here. It may not be what everybody likes or thinks, but it's going to be a great project for the town of Monson. It's going to be a great project for the town of Palmer, who's adjacent right next door, and also other communities. And we want to give Monson a place that's proud when the residents come here, stay here for 5 years, for 50 years, for 70 years, for 65 years. We want the residents of Monson to be proud of this development as much as we want it to be a great project for Westmass, and we can hang it up as our premier project as well. So with that, I will open it up. Dan is with me on the microphone, and he's available to answer questions if I can't, so I may shove some to him because he's more on the weeds and technical. But again, we don't know how many houses, we don't know what it's going to look like, so try to keep it as generic as you can because we don't know the specifics yet and we're not hiding anything. It's just we don't know. We're going through the development. We've only owned it for 3 or 4 months, and it's quite a long process. But go ahead. Yes, sir.
Obviously, we want zoning to be smooth and improved because the alternative is terrible. But without knowing the total number of units, do you expect to know that before the town?
Yes, and we want the zoning to be smooth as possible because you guys want the project here without the threat of the state. That's just a realization. If we walk away, that could happen. We want the town to support what we're trying to do here. That's important to us. It's not shove it in your face, drive it down your throat and say, this is what we're doing or the state's taking it. That was just a precursor of what could happen. Yes, sir.
As a follow-up, I think it would be more comforting to know that, let's say you have 500 units, 5,000, whatever the number, but also add a not to exceed. If you can do that, I think that I personally would be okay with knowing that, okay, this isn't going to be a super dense thing in 15 years because the zoning is so cool.
Yeah, and we're going to work with the planning board on that, and that's something we've discussed. The governor threw out a number, and I sat up here 4 months ago completely defying her number, saying we're never going to get to 600. We're not going to get there. But we're not trying to get there. We're trying to make it accommodating for the town of for the town of Monson and Palmer because they're going to have impacts. And sir, you're absolutely right. If there is language that can be written of, here's what we're presenting as a group, and here's what we're going to go into the planning board and the leadership on that, say, here's what we think is doable, then yes, I mean, it's restrictive with, potentially milestones you have to meet or whatever it would be. Absolutely.
I was just told by M-PACT, if you don't come up to the microphone, they won't be able to capture the questions for the video that they're doing that's going to be replayed on M-PACT. So
If you can't make it up to the microphone for whatever reason, like Jesse in the back's probably too lazy, but other than that, I'll certainly repeat your question if that's okay with you. And if I don't get it verbatim, it's close enough and we agree on that. But if you want to come with the microphone, help yourself. Or I think even Dan maybe could walk out and give you the microphone if that's okay, or I can repeat it. Oh, so no other questions, we're out. No, I'm only kidding. Yes, sir. Yep.
How you doing? I'm Craig Schweitzer from the Planning Board. And with respect to your question of zoning, I see it as a several step process, where first it goes to town meeting vote to create a zone to enable some of these projects to go forward. And then after which, depending on the use, there would be a special permit or site plan review, or possibly some allowed by right, which would have to be reviewed and approved with a public hearing by the planning board. So there is a couple of steps and a couple of opportunities for the town to weigh in on this. It's not an automatic carte blanche for them to do what they want. And also, if I could, I took a drive through Belchertown State. Now, that project was done by the state, correct?
Correct, the quasi, the state and Mass Development, who's a quasi of the state.
And it took forever. And when I went through it, it truly wasn't completely impressive. I'm assuming Westmass would give the town more opportunity to control the future. And also, I think it would be market-driven instead of being left with a bunch of buildings that are still in Belchertown in pretty rough shape. And I'm hoping at some point, and I'm sure this is a multi-step process, that a lot of the buildings that exist, that hopefully most of them, that aren't going to be reusable or suitable for reuse will be taken down. Because I know at Belchertown, I'm looking at a bunch of them with bad roofs and in varying states of deterioration.
Our plan right now, well, I'll tell you my plan. I'm demoing everything with the exception potentially of saving two. One is the Daily Center, which I already spoke of. We're just going to add an E on the wall to make it my last name proper. I'm joking, of course. We'll respect the past. But, and then the Simon's building? Simon's building up in the front.
Brookside.
I'm sorry, not Simon's, Brookside. I said the wrong name to you as well. I apologize. Brookside, which is kind of the L-shaped building right up in the front on Upper Palmer. And when I walked in there for the first time, it's boxy, it's closed, it's tight. But what I saw, if the walls weren't bad, we could take down some walls and make some really nice apartments for veterans. I think that's a perfect spot for them. And or some senior housing. You know, it's too good of a building. And I think very preliminarily, I think we did an analysis on it and it looks like it could be saved. Those are the only two. I've told the state, this is where it drives me nuts with the state. I went to them and I said, we need to take down every single building here except potentially for Daly and Brookside. And they said, well, couldn't we just do it in phases? Like take a few down here and leave some up there and we'll get those in like the next 3 or 4 years. And I'm like, no, that's one of the key drops that I've put out there is they're supposed to give us the funding to do all of this, the demo, right? So that's on the line. If they don't give us the balance of the funding, we already have a slug of money. It came with the sale. And they're supposed to, within the next probably 6 months or so, give us the balance, which we're getting numbers on now for the balance of the demo. Every single building is getting taken down. I'm not going to have a beautiful single-family ranch home or something up in the front and looking out your front window at a beautiful mountain with the big, we call them the dog bones, with the big brick buildings with red X's on them up above. Number one, you're going to devalue the entire project. And number two, why would anybody ever want to live there and look at that, look out the window? So our goal, and it is, I'll call it a key drop, everybody can remember that. It's a key drop is if we can't take down the buildings that we need to take down, which is everyone except for Daly and Brookside potentially, then we can't do the projects. I'm not going to be, okay, we'll come back in 5 years and get those 4 buildings up there. We all know what happens with government on that, right? Well, we can't do it now. Come back in another year. And then we're playing catch up for the next 12 years. And that's not, Monson doesn't deserve that. The property doesn't deserve that. And our program that we will have in place doesn't deserve that and can't operate that way. So, way in the back.
Thank you. Going back to the grant that we've already gotten, the town or whoever it was that was given the money for fixing the bridge.
Yep.
My understanding from your handout is that also includes fixing the road going to either side of the bridge. So would that be from Upper Palmer to Macomber Road, that whole road there? The whole, was it State Hospital Road?
It would be. It'd be right here. You can see it coming down between Brookside and the other building, right up to across the bridge. The red is the bridge. It would come up and then go out to Hospital Road from there.
And are they going to be constructing that to handle the traffic that you're hoping eventually will be going through there?
The roads will be built to DOT standard that, yes, it will manage the traffic flow of residents who drive through as they do now, and also the residents that will live there, yes.
Yeah, I'm one of those residents. I live on the other Macomber Road.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea when that's going to start?
So there's a catch, and I'm trying to be honest with everybody, I want to be honest, that if Westmass doesn't come in and do this project, and we give the keys back to the state, let's say that hypothetically happens. Again, it's not a plan, we don't want to do it. If we did, that $5 million could get pulled back from the state because we're the private developer that's committing to doing private development on the site. And that's all part of the MassWorks grant program is the town needs it. The town says, here's what we're going to do. The private developer says, if the town doesn't do this, we can't do what we need to do. And that's how you get awarded the project. The town went to the state and said, in the application, we need this. It's an unsafe bridge. It's a bad road, blah, 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 blah. That we went in with the town and said, we need this done because if it's not done, we can't do our development. Those are the 2 points that the state looks at and says, okay, we're going to award you the $5 million for the bridge and the road work. But if we back out because of things that the state does or doesn't do, there's a potential that they could come and sweep that back and not do the work. So honestly, after the May meeting, for the town meeting, for the zone, I think a lot of these issues go away because then we're comfortable as a team, as a private developer, to come in and say, okay, let's go forward. We're ready to go, making sure that we have all the funding we need, of course, but we're more comfortable 100% committing to do this. So yes, the state is going to pay for that road to accommodate not only the use today, but also what's going to be used in the future development.
So if you don't get the zoning, we may lose that as well.
I'm not going to say you will, ma'am, but very well possibility.
Jeff, if I might just add a couple items for texture on that. So right now, Hospital Road is town-owned. It's a town-accepted public way, as is Macomber, pretty much all the way up through about where the Daly building is, or a little bit beyond State Hospital Road. So our goal with this grant, with the town's blessing on this, we've worked with this, is, of course, the bridge, which is a DOT specified bridge. It's going to meet all those standards. But also get State Hospital Road in position that it can be accepted by the town as a public way. Right now, it's a private way that Westmass owns. And so even though $5 million seems like a lot of money, there is no usable water sewer infrastructure on that campus, right? So part of that road project would include about 2,000 feet of road improvement, but it's what's underneath the road, which is what we really need, which is water and sewer lines to get us a loop from Upper Palmer Road down to Hospital Road. You have a good water line down to Hospital Road, not so good up at Upper Palmer. And one of the goals long-term on the project would be to increase the water flow that can get to Upper Palmer with this project, because we're like potentially the connector, if you will. So, that gets you only about 2,000 feet of pipe, and then in roadway work, and then that's 2 years roughly worth of work. And then it doesn't connect to anything. So when you think about how long is it going to take to build the site, that's just one small section. But if it does go through, we'll get Macomber resurfaced, hopefully. That's the plan, as long as inflation doesn't eat into the budget. So you'll have a nice drive all the way through there, but nothing is activated though, and it'll be another $5 or $7 million to get to the point of activation.
At that point, it becomes a town road.
Yeah, so if you...
Does plow it now.
Yeah, so.
Dan, can you repeat the question that she had?
Yes, so the question is, will it become a town road? And I think if everything works perfectly, and we get through the zoning and we do everything, our internal goal, and we spoke to the town about this, is we'd be in position to have a layout in front of town meeting May 2028. And that's when it would be turned over as a brand-new road with brand-new infrastructure. Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Right here in the gray jacket. Dan, right here. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Oh, no, I'm here now. Can I take this one?
Next, sir. Go ahead.
Is the potential housing going to be rental, or they have to buy in?
Again, we don't know the numbers yet of what percentage. There could be potential for rentals. There could be condominium associations, or there could be full-out, single-family units housing or townhomes housing. So it depends on what the layout is and what the economics are. But it's not, it's going to be a managed development of housing.
I've got several questions. Tom Fournier, I have property on State Avenue that comes up from Palmer to the hospital. One question that I'd like answered first, I guess. When you mention veterans housing, are you talking disabled vets? Are you talking family vets with children and wives, or?
Yeah, Dan can answer that one. He's been talking to the two groups.
Yeah, so we approached Tunnels to Tower they've been looking for a New England village, if you will, a veterans village location somewhere in New England. So we reached out to them. We were told that a couple years ago they had stopped in a town and they had a couple of conversations. And also Soldier On, which has done a number of properties down in Agawam and at Leeds Hospital. They're also going to apparently take over, I think, operations of the Soldiers Home out in Chelsea, maybe potentially what's in the works. But so we have active conversations engaged with them in the style of housing for those organizations is their dormitory style single person occupancies. T2T does do what I'd call an adder in some projects in which they build a smaller village component with smaller structures, potentially for family style living, if not. But Brookside, which we thought when we originally looked at the building, because it has on the basement floor, it's been set up for like institutional uses, like it'd be like counseling, job counseling, medical health counseling. You could do a variety of different support services, because all of these facilities, when you place a veteran there, you want all these wraparound services there. And so that's why Brookside was so attractive. Plus it lays out nicely, roughly about 60 apartments there. So I can't guarantee that that's what's going to come necessarily with those two operators, but that was preliminarily some of the internal conversations we've had about a reuse on Brookside.
It's okay. If it's all right, I've got some other questions. The current property, the power plant, which you have nothing to do with, right? You mentioned you'd be tearing down all the buildings. Is that only the buildings on your 106 acres?
Yes.
Nothing else?
No.
Because currently that power plant has steam tunnels, piping, asbestos, going from the power plant to just about every single building on the property. What's your take on how that'll be handled?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan.
That's a great question. So there's about, in our bid package for demolition, I think it's about 1,200 linear feet of underground steam tunnel in the tunnels, steam pipes that'll be abated with asbestos and the tunnels crushed on our part of the campus. And there was also years ago an overland steam line that came off that lower end and then crossed the road and then came up onto the main campus. That's been removed by the state. So our goal, in order to make because part of the problem is when you're looking ahead to what reuse is, the last thing in the world you want to do is think you've got a good site to do something and then you run into one of these underground tunnels, So that's why our demolition package is going to remove the tunnels, yeah.
Where street access, one of the maps you had up there showed Macomber Road. And currently, you can't drive from the state hospital property on Macomber out to Upper Palmer Road. Are there any thoughts when your development is there? Will that have to be a connecting road to Upper Palmer? Would it become a connecting road, or will it stay as it is, where there's no access from the property, hospital property, to Upper Palmer?
Yeah, so if you go up Macomber now, you take a right if you're coming in from the railroad track side of Hospital Road, and you can go right over the single lane bridge that's been restricted, and then you get up on Upper Palmer that way. That is available now. Over the years, even though DCAM has controlled that road, they allowed when, for obviously ease of travel because Hospital Road Bridge is closed, they allowed cars to come through there. So, if the project goes forward, at some point, because it is a complete replacement of the bridge, at some point we have to deal with what closing the road down looks like. But when it's all finished and it's accepted by a public way, you'll have easy transport all the way from Hospital Road to Macomber.
I'm not sure that answered my... Yeah.
Go right through the campus.
Sewers, currently sewage from Monson is treated at a Palmer plant. That's correct. I'm sure that's where Palmer comes into the picture, and they're impacted by this project. Has Palmer any discussions with Palmer regarding that?
Dan can come in a minute. There has been some discussions, but again, similar to what we're talking about tonight, it's before we have an actual project. The Palmer town manager reached out to us, and Jen as well, of respectfully for their own communities, asking questions that we just can't answer, and we won't be able to answer. But I think Dan will probably sum it up. But until we have an actual project that we know what the impact is going to be, again, those conversations are very limited until we can figure out what they're going to be. And I think Dan's had some discussions with Palmer, as has Ty and Bond and other folks, but Dan probably can address it.
So the utility package, obviously water and sewer are an important part of the component of the project. So on the sewer side, if you recall, though, what Jeff had mentioned, back in the late 60s, 1,700 residents and hundreds of employees. All that sewer went down pipes. It all fed, most of it, through gravity, down the hill, on the Hospital Road. It actually went across the Hospital Road, down by the power plant, and there's an overland underground sewer line that goes down that way towards the railroad tracks, and the Monson lift station is down by the railroad tracks. And then from there, it gets shot into Palmer. So at one time, there was a lot of toilet flushing going on that campus. And so part of the development package would include, we need to be successful to redevelop the sewer relationship with the town of Palmer. And of course, anything that we build that gets conveyed as a utility, at some point it has to be in position to be conveyed in the town for under consideration because it becomes a public utility. So those are conversations that we have, but they will further develop. We don't even know what kind of flowage is going to come off of their water use or anything like that, but that'll all be resolved if the project goes forward, probably sometime late next year.
And back to the veterans thing, has Westmass provided veterans housing on any project up to this point? No.
No. And two questions. Two people up there.
Yeah, we'll go here and then here. Okay.
I hear you consistently saying that you want to be an advocate for Monson. What I am not hearing, or just you barely touching on, is any type of a commercial change to this property. We have a planning board who has been trying to allocate new rules and regulations against homebound businesses, and a lot of people have been looking for spots in Monson that they can move their businesses to, but we just do not have that in part of our zoning availability. And with this large tract of land, I think a good portion of it could be used for commercial development. So our tradespeople, our lawn care people, those who want to stay in town now have a place to put their businesses. And if you're talking about changing the majority of this property into housing, where are these people going to work? And if they're going out of town to work, they're not going to spend time in this area to help out our local restaurants, to help out our local grocery stores and retail stores. If you keep the small businesses in town, you give people a place to work in town, they're going to stay and they're going to support the town because they're going to have time. So I would like to think that there would be an area carved out, and I understand you don't want to look out your window at a bunch of Butler buildings, but there's enough movement in the property where a commercial area could be set up so that we can continue the small businesses that have been in the town for years, give people a place to stay in town, give people a reason to come to town because there's a place to work without traveling.
And thank you for that. By full disclosure, I used to work for a Butler building company out of Southampton. But anyway, no, you're right. And that's part of our overall program. This isn't going to be just 100% housing. It's got to be 30 to 40% of the developable acreage right now we're looking at for commercial retail use. So there will be, Dan, do we have an exact square footage of what we're thinking? And again, this isn't like 150,000 square foot building. It could be 10, 15,000 square foot buildings.
So, yeah, the best way to look at this is it's all contingent upon zoning for sure. But we have built into our models on this site somewhere about 120,000 square feet of available space, mostly along Hospital Road, for some commercial, light industrial, potentially retail style environment. So, but again, if you know, these are going to be evolving conversations as it goes through the planning process. But one of the reasons or the idea behind that is because the site is so costly infrastructure to build out, all of the utility package, water, sewer, and power lines are right there on Hospital Road. So that makes the most sense to mass those kinds of uses down there because those are the types of buildings that are going to mostly need that service, right? So that is built in 120,000 square feet, as Jeff pointed out, not all in one building, in multiple different building footprints. It could be, 10,000, 20,000, 25,000, but that whole strip along Hospital Road, in the future, it could be that. There's no question, if it gets through zoning.
And I think across Western Mass, we do commercial, development, obviously with the mills and all of our business parks. Across Western Mass, there's there's one available building out there now, and it's top dollar. Anything built from 1990 to today. And the most needed and wanted building is 25,000 feet and below for commercial use. The people that own the buildings from 1990 and to today aren't letting them go because their businesses are still in there, they're thriving, they're still great buildings. We own several of them. The buildings before, they can sit on the market for 30, 40 years with nobody touching them because they're old, they're antiquated, the mechanical systems are all older. So there is a desperate need for, as I mentioned before, ma'am, the small mom and pop machine shop that may be 6,000, 7,000 square feet. Hey, I want to add a new product line. I need 15,000 square feet. Those are needed buildings across Western Mass, not just in Monson. So we take that into consideration very seriously, that we're not going to let this land go fully developed for housing. There's going to be a significant commercial, light industrial, retail use for it as well.
You spoke about the one bridge. What about the second bridge that's been closed for 20 years? Is that under your project, or is that something the town of Monson has to take care of?
No, so that's not under our project. We have had initial discussions with DOT. If we get this project going and it's successful, which it will be, that we would like to work with the state to figure out how we can potentially get that bridge reactivated. We don't know. And quite honestly, that's not our immediate focus right now, but I know Dan's already spoken to Mass DOT several times, and Sean as well, about everything else going on, but also specifically that bridge of what's the future of it and can it be built into a package in the next 10 years of being reactivated.
Yeah, and actually, just to follow up on this, one of the recent conversations that we've been having with DOT is, because we know our project is going to take down State Hospital Road Bridge for a period of time, could we do a temporary bridge, I forget the name, a Bailey Bridge on Hospital Road? And some of those Bailey bridges, if you pay attention in some of the rural areas of the state, they've been up for years and years and years. So I've asked DOT to look into the bridge abutments there. Preliminary review by some of the engineering staff that we've had out on the site says it might not be a big lift to put a Bailey on that road. And they're working with us. We have an agreement with DOT to have regular dialogues on this topic. And everybody is sensitive to the bridge scenario because it's not just our two bridges there, those bridges, but it's also right down the road in Palmer, there's some troubled bridges as well. So, this is the first time in a long time, there's this mass of eyeballs looking at this site for a lot of different reasons. And the transportation infrastructure is pretty delicate out there. So, if we get some breaking news for you and that happens to occur down the line, we'll certainly share that, and that would be, a real good thing for the project. What's the likelihood, though, down the line as far as what's going to go on from here to like town meeting? You won't see any activity of that. It's all engineering work now being done. So the bridge is not likely to be out to bid until late in the spring with construction sometime in the summertime. And even that might be, the bridge is actually already designed. It's the roads that haven't been designed yet. So that'll delay things a little bit.
And I think, just to put a point on the bridge that's currently closed, there's a water main that runs under it, next to it, whatever it is. We're not going to lose sight of that. That's going to be something down the road that we will look at and work with the state as a point of a project, because that benefits us having that open. Right now, as the road goes, people are going to be zigzagging through the campus, up State Hospital, onto Macomber, then onto Hospital. And that's not always the best solution for people that don't live there or work there or play there, if you will. So we're going to be talking to DOT and really pushing that issue that if this project goes, we need to have a hard conversation, because I'd rather have people coming right down Hospital Road, right over the bridge to Upper Palmer and go, as opposed to zigzagging as it is today through the campus.
The property that's carved out for Fish and Game, is that contingent on your project going through, or is that going to happen one way or the other?
That's already, it's been transferred over. The camp's up there now pulling down the old child campus buildings. That's what's happening on the upper side of Upper Palmer. Those will come down, and that's Fish and Game. That has nothing to do with what we're doing. It'll remain state property.
What about the water tower that's existed? Is that still going to be in operation?
As of right now, the plan is yes. I think we've internally had some preliminary discussions of, is there potential to get enough water to the site down the road? Not this year, but certainly in the future, that we don't have to have that water tower, because that's not something we want to maintain. We will, of course, to keep everybody safe and provide the proper flow. But those things are a challenge to maintain over the years, and it's a lot of money you invest. So we hope that we can work with Jen and her team again next year to look at some ways to get creative with financing to potentially tie into some existing mains off campus that can bring the water flow back in up to the standards it needs to be to keep everybody safe and happy, and then discontinue that water tower in future years. Any other questions, thoughts, considerations? I'm not going to say concerns. I'm not going to say it. But hey, listen, everybody, thank you again from Westmass, and obviously Jen and her team for coming out tonight. I know it's an important subject. We are here to be neighbors in Monson. And I hope that as we continue the dialogue over the next 6 or 7 months before, oh God, did I just do 6 or 7? Forget that. 4 or 5 months till May, that we can have real mature discussions and really hope to embellish the community that Monson is, and really take into respect working with the planning board on what our next steps are, because that's important. We want to be good neighbors here. So thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. Stay warm, and happy holidays to everybody. Thank you.